Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into talismans. You've expressed interest in these objects of power, and not just what they are, but how they're made and the principles behind how they're supposed to work. And we'll be using Israel Regardie's book, How to Make and Use Talismans, as our guide. So let's dive in.
Yeah, it's really interesting how talismans throughout history have captivated people with this idea that an object can influence our lives.
Well, yeah, Regardie defines a talisman as pretty much any object as long as there's intention put into it. So we're talking everything from, jewelry to a written word on a piece of paper.
Right. I think the intention is what really sets a talisman apart from just a regular lucky charm.
Oh, okay.
Because while both are carried for good luck, talismans have a more specific goal behind them.
So it's not just hoping for good luck, but actually trying to attract something very specific.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Harnessing that symbolic power to influence your reality.
Speaking of symbolic power, our source material delves into Kabbalah, and it plays a big role in talisman creation, especially in the Western tradition. Can you give us a quick rundown of what Kabbalah is and why it's so relevant here?
Well, Kabbalah is a system of Jewish mysticism. It explores the connections between the divine and the physical world using symbols, numbers, and Hebrew letters. And many talismans incorporate these Hebrew words and sentences, and their designs often reflect Qabalistic principles.
It almost sounds like there's a whole secret language to these objects.
There's a rich symbolic vocabulary, and it's key to tapping into that talisman's potential.
Regardie also mentions geomancy, which I'll admit I had to look up. It sounds kind of like something out of like Lord of the Rings or something. How does that tie into talisman creation?
Geomancy is all about interpreting the Earth's energies through patterns. So like imagine if you tossed a handful of pebbles and saw how they fell. You can actually read those patterns to gain insight. And these patterns or geomantic symbols can be used to create talismans.
So like each pattern holds a certain energy or meaning.
Yeah. They offer a way to personalize talismans by aligning them with very specific energies or outcomes. Regardie even experimented with creating his own talismans using these symbols.
Oh, wow.
It shows that it's a system open to exploration and personal interpretation.
That actually makes it a little less scary, knowing even the experts play around with it.
Absolutely. Talisman creation is a process that invites engagement and exploration.
But with so many symbols to choose from, we've got planetary, we've got zodiacal, we've got geomant. How do you know which ones are right for what you're trying to achieve? Like if you wanted to attract love or money, is there like a talisman cheat sheet or something?
Well, there are traditional correspondences. So
Yeah.
each planet, for instance, is associated with a specific energy and an area of life. So Jupiter, with its expansive energy, is linked to abundance and good fortune.
Okay.
And Venus, as the planet of love and beauty, might be invoked for matters of the heart.
So it's like each planet has its own like specialty.
You could say that.
Okay.
It's about aligning your intention with the energy most likely to support it.
So like if you were creating a talisman for an artist friend of yours, you might lean toward Venus to give them like a boost in their creativity and their inspiration.
Exactly. The Greater Key of Solomon, which is a grimoire that's mentioned in our source material, goes into great detail about those planetary influences and how they've been used in talismanic magic.
Now, this does sound like choose your own adventure for magic, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just picking the right planet and like slapping it on a necklace.
Yeah, it's not that simple. You really have to focus. Intention is paramount.
Right. So it's not just about the object, it's about what you're putting into it. It's like, the difference between a recipe and actually cooking and tasting a dish.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights how important it is for the creator to actively participate in the whole process.
Now, we haven't talked about sigils yet. What are those? How do those fit into this whole world of talismanic power?
Well, sigils are fascinating, really. They're visual representations of intentions, often derived from names or words of power. So you can think of them as like a way to condense a complex desire or goal into a potent symbol.
So it's like a visual spell.
You can think of it that way. And there's a system called the Kabbalah of 9 chambers that's often used to create these sigils.
Okay, this is where I'm lost. Do I need that PhD in ancient mysticism we were talking about earlier?
No, not at all. Really, it's just a simple code. You see, each Hebrew letter is assigned a numerical value on a grid. So let's say you wanted to create a sigil for success. You could take the word Jupiter, remember it's associated with abundance, convert those letters to numbers using the grid, and then you connect those numbers in a specific order. That symbol becomes your sigil for attracting success.
So it's like a personalized symbol that you're infusing with your desire.
Exactly. And the process of creating it becomes a magical act in itself as you pour your intention and energy into that symbol.
I'm gonna have to make one of those after this. Can we back up for a second? You mentioned using the Jupiter Kamea. What is that?
Oh, yes. A kamea, also known as a magic square, is a grid of numbers that add up to the same sum in every row, column, and diagonal. And each planet has its own kamea, adding another layer of meaning and power to that sigil creation.
So it's not just randomly connecting the dots. You're using a specific grid that resonates with what you want.
Exactly. It's about weaving those energies together to create a powerful, focused intention.
This is starting to feel like advanced level magic here, but I'm loving it. We've talked about attracting things, but what about repelling negative influences? Can talismans do that?
They can. Talismans can be used to counteract astrological imbalances in your birth chart.
Mhm.
For example, someone with a lot of Aries signs, which are known for being flighty and changeable, they might create a Saturn talisman for grounding and stability.
That's kind of interesting because Saturn is always associated with limitations.
It's true that Saturn represents boundaries and structure, but that can be positive. It's about balance.
Okay.
The Saturn talisman, in this case, would help to ground that airy energy, bring in focus and discipline.
So it's not about erasing those airy qualities, but just integrating them with something a little more grounded.
Exactly. Using that energy of the planets to create a more harmonious and balanced expression of yourself.
I love that, using it to balance your life. So far, we've focused on planetary energies and geometric patterns, but our source material also mentions using biblical verses and divine names in talisman creation. How does that work?
Well, words hold power too.
Oh, okay.
In talismanic tradition, biblical verses and divine names are used to invoke a specific energy or quality. So it's about tapping into a lineage of spiritual power.
So it's like drawing on the strength and wisdom of those words.
Yes. It's about invoking that power to support your own intention.
Does it have to be from the Bible? Could it be from somewhere else?
Not necessarily. Any text that holds deep meaning for you, any words that resonate with your soul can be incorporated into a talisman. It's about finding what speaks to you personally.
So like a quote from your favorite poem, maybe. Or song lyrics that you just, love and that really inspire you.
Absolutely. If it holds power for you, it can become a source of power for your talisman.
This opens up a lot of possibilities. Now, before we get too carried away with all these complex systems, let's take a step back and consider a simple approach to talisman creation. The 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and ether.
The elements are a fantastic framework for understanding talismanic magic. It's a way to connect with the fundamental forces of nature and harness those energies.
Now, we've touched on these elements briefly before, but can you remind us of their basic qualities? How do they relate to talismans?
Sure. So, earth is associated with grounding, stability, and the material world. Air represents intellect, communication, and the realm of ideas.
Okay.
Water embodies emotions, intuition, and the flow of energy. Fire symbolizes passion, willpower, transformation, and ether, the 5th element, that represents spirit, connection to the divine, and it's the unifying force behind all creation.
It's like a whole system of correspondences just based on nature.
Exactly. And you can use these correspondences to create talismans that align with your specific goals. So, for example, if you are seeking financial abundance, you might work with the earth element, using materials like crystals or stones that are associated with prosperity.
What about if you're trying to get over a creative block?
Then the air element might be helpful.
Okay.
You could create a talisman using, feathers or incense or symbols that represent communication and inspiration.
So you could pretty much create a talisman for any intention by tapping into the energy of that element.
That's the beauty of this system.
Yeah.
It's adaptable, it's accessible, and it draws upon the power of nature itself.
Now, each element has its own visual symbol too, right?
You're thinking of the taptic symbols.
Yeah.
So the square for earth, the circle for air, the crescent for water, the triangle for fire, and the egg shape for ether. And you can incorporate these symbols into your talisman's design, which adds another layer of meaning. It makes it look really cool.
It's amazing how these symbols, drawn from nature and ancient wisdom, can be used to focus our intentions and manifest our desires. So, okay, we've created this talisman, we've chosen our symbols, we've put our intention into it, but is it ready to work its magic?
Not quite. There's one crucial step remaining.
Oh.
We have to charge the talisman.
Oh, okay.
This is where we activate its potential, awaken its energy, and make it a conduit for our desires.
That sounds really important. But before we dive into the specifics of how to charge a talisman, I think we need a little break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon to explore how to bring your talisman to life.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we talked about how to create talismans, exploring symbolism, planetary energies, and the power of intention. But a talisman's not truly complete until it's charged. It's got to have that extra little something to connect it to your desires.
Yeah. We've built the framework, and now we need to plug in the power source.
Okay.
Charging a talisman is all about awakening its potential, activating its energy, and making it a conduit for your will. I'm intrigued. What are some techniques to charge a talisman? Is it as dramatic as it sounds?
Well, it can be, but one of the simplest methods is just visualization.
Okay.
You hold the talisman in your hand, you focus on your intention, and visualize energy flowing from you into the object, like you're pouring your desire right into it.
So if I was charging a talisman for protection, I would visualize like a shield of energy surrounding me.
Exactly. Imagine it glowing with that protective power, radiating that sense of safety and security.
You could even speak your intention out loud if you wanted to.
Yes. You can amplify that energy with your voice.
It's kind of like when you hold something precious, like when you were a kid and you're making a wish on it or hoping for something.
Yeah. There's a connection there. It's about infusing the object with your personal energy and will.
Now, we also discussed the power of the elements. Can they be used to charge the talisman too?
Oh, absolutely. Each element has its own unique energy that can activate a talisman. For example, if you have an earth talisman, you can bury it in the ground for a day or two, allowing it to absorb that grounding, stabilizing energy of the earth.
And what about the other elements?
Well, for an air talisman, imagine holding it up in the wind, letting the breeze carry your intention into it,
Okay.
or passing it through the smoke of incense.
Uh-huh.
You could also, for a water talisman, submerge it in a bowl of spring water or a natural stream, connecting it to the fluidity and the emotional depth of water.
Mm-hmm.
And for a fire talisman, you could pass it through a candle flame, igniting its power with passion and willpower.
Wow, those are really vivid images. I feel like you're doing like a mini ritual for each of those elements.
Yeah, in a way you are. You're consciously working with the forces of nature, harnessing their power to activate your talisman.
Now, ether is a bit more elusive than the other elements.
Right.
How would you go about charging a talisman that's aligned with ether?
Well, ether represents that subtle spiritual energy that connects everything. So you could try holding it up to the night sky, allowing it to absorb the starlight.
Uh-huh.
Or you can meditate with it, visualize it bathed in divine light. The key is to connect it to that transcendent energy that flows through all of creation.
It's more about subtle energy work than a physical action.
Yeah, you're right. It's about aligning the talisman with that universal life force.
Okay. Now, once a talisman is charged, how do you actually use it? Do you carry it with you, display it in your home? Is there like a specific protocol?
That's a good question. There's no one right answer, really. The way you use your talisman depends on its purpose and your personal preference. Some talismans are designed to be worn as jewelry, close to your skin, where they can interact with your energy field. Others might be carried in a pocket or a purse, ready to be held or gazed upon when you need a boost of their specific energy.
So if I had like a talisman for courage, I could keep it in my pocket and touch it before a big presentation or a tough conversation.
Perfect example. That physical contact can serve as a reminder of its power and the intention that you put into it.
What about talismans that aren't meant to be carried?
Well, some are more suited for placement in your environment.
Mm-hmm.
A talisman for protection might be hung above your doorway.
Makes sense.
One for abundance could be placed on an altar or in your office, a place where you handle money.
Yeah.
It's all about finding a spot where it feels empowered and where it can radiate its energy effectively.
I like that. So a little intuition is helpful here.
Absolutely. Trust your instincts.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong way to use a talisman, as long as it feels aligned with your intentions and it makes you feel empowered.
Now, I have to ask, is there ever a reason to not use a talisman? Are there any ethical considerations or potential downsides we should be aware of?
That's a really important question. While talismans aren't inherently good or bad, their effectiveness and ethical implications really come down to intention. You see, a talisman that was created with harmful intent, well, it could potentially be used to manipulate or control others, and that goes against ethical magical practice.
Oh, wow.
It's really crucial to approach talisman creation with a sense of responsibility and integrity, using this power for good. and respecting the free will of others.
It's like any tool. It can be used for construction or destruction. It's up to the user.
Exactly. It's up to each of us to wield that power wisely and with awareness of its potential impact.
It's a good point to remember. We've talked a lot about harnessing energy and attracting certain outcomes, but ultimately, we're responsible for how we use that power.
Absolutely. Talismanic magic is a powerful tool for self-discovery and transformation, but it's up to us to use it ethically and with a clear understanding of our intentions.
This has been so enlightening. We went from like ancient symbols to charging talismans with the elements. I can't wait to see what else there is to learn.
Me too.
But for now, I think it's time for us to move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we're going to delve even deeper into this world and the potential to transform our lives. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've explored the ideas and the energy behind talismans. We even talked about how to charge them up with our own intentions. But I'm kind of curious about the actual, like, nuts and bolts of making one. What materials are we supposed to use? Like, how do we go from an idea to a real object that we can hold?
Well, that's where the magic really comes to life, don't you think?
Yeah.
Choosing the right materials is an important step. Each one carries its own unique energy and symbolism.
So we're not just picking stuff at random.
No,
Eh.
definitely not.
Yeah.
You got to think about the qualities that you want your talisman to embody. So, for example, for strength and durability, metals like iron or steel are great choices. But if you're working with a talisman for, say, growth and connection to nature, wood might be a better fit.
Okay, so for like a protection talisman, you'd pick a sturdy metal to show that it's like an unyielding shield.
Exactly. Or maybe a stone like black tourmaline, which is known for its protective properties. It's about matching the energy of the material with what you're trying to achieve.
What about like a talisman for healing? What would you use for that?
For that, I'd recommend a softer material. Like, copper or silver might be good choices. Or even a stone like rose quartz, which is associated with love and healing, something that brings to mind gentleness and restoration.
Now, what about crystals? We've talked about those a lot. How would you use those in a talisman?
Crystals are fantastic. Every crystal has a unique vibration and purpose. Like, clear quartz is a great all-purpose amplifier, while amethyst is known for its spiritual and intuitive properties.
Right. So if I wanted to boost my creativity, I could use like carnelian because it's known for inspiration.
Exactly. You got to find that synergy between your intention and the material.
What about herbs? Could you use herbs in a talisman?
Oh, herbs are a wonderful way to bring in those natural aromas and energies. You can use them dried or they're essential oils. Even fresh herbs, if you're making something you're going to use right away, you can, tie them together, sew them into a pouch. Some people even press them into clay or wax to make them last longer.
So for a love talisman, you could combine, I don't know, rose petals, lavender, and a piece of rose quartz.
That's a lovely combination. The rose and the rose quartz both have that love energy, and lavender adds a touch of calm. Plus, the scent itself can be really powerful. It activates your senses.
Like a multi-sensory experience.
Yeah, it deepens the connection to the talisman's intention. Engaging your senses really makes it more potent and personal.
Okay, so we've got our materials, we're feeling inspired, we're ready to start making this thing. What advice would you give someone who's like just starting out?
Well, the first thing you want to do is create a sacred space. Clear your workspace, light a candle, maybe burn some incense. Whatever helps you feel centered and focused on what you're doing.
So setting the mood is important.
Oh, it's essential. You want to create an atmosphere where you can focus your energy.
What about while we're actually making the talisman? Should we be like picturing the outcome we want?
Visualization is key. The more you can imbue the talisman with your energy, the more powerful it's going to be.
Okay, so if I'm making a talisman for, say, abundance, I could imagine myself surrounded by wealth and prosperity as I'm making it.
Yes, imagine that energy flowing from you through your hands right into the talisman. Feel it, believe it, and let that energy become part of what you're creating.
It's almost like a meditation, you know?
It is. It's a very mindful process. It's all about being present, pouring your heart and soul into it.
What about symbols and stuff? Should we, I don't know, carve them, paint them, or is there something else we could do?
Well, it depends on what you're using, right? But carving, painting, drawing, embroidery, those are all good options. You can even just knot cords or braid ribbons in a meaningful pattern.
So if I was using wood, I could carve a sigil into it, or paint a rune on it, or even just like wrap it with a cord that's been knotted to show what I want.
Exactly. It's about finding a method that feels right to you and works with the material you've chosen. Just trust your intuition and let your creativity take over.
I love that. So many ways to make it your own.
That's what's so great about making talismans. You're connecting with your inner artist, your intuition, even your connection to something bigger.
I think we've covered pretty much everything, from choosing materials to putting our intentions into them, and of course, charging it up with energy, which we talked about earlier.
That's right. That's what really brings it to life.
This has been such a cool journey. We went from ancient symbols to charging talismans with the elements. I'm feeling so inspired. I want to start making my own right away.
That's fantastic. Remember, the most important part of this is your intention, your belief in the power of magic.
So if we really believe in it, if we put our whole heart into it, anything's possible.
Absolutely. The magic is within you. The talisman is just a tool to help you unlock it.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
It's been my pleasure. May your journey be full of magic and meaning.
And to everyone listening, we encourage you to explore this world, tap into your own creative power, and see what magic awaits you. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.